Fred Kemp is president and CEO of the Atlantic Council. He's also a CNBC contributor. Fred, welcome. What exactly is at stake for Ukraine, Russia, and maybe all of Europe on Friday?
Well, there are three possible outcomes. The first would be the horror scenario for Ukraine, for NATO, I think also for the United States. And that would be the abandonment of Ukraine, making a land deal over the heads of the Ukrainians and the Europeans with Russia, and not giving Ukraine what it needs to take care of its own security, and doing that all without Ukraine at the table. The best case outcome would be a deal where Trump realizes he's been had by Putin, he's been humiliated, he's been, as he called, tapped along. He continues to provide support for Ukraine, even if it's by selling weaponry to the Europeans, and he slaps tough new sanctions on Putin. And those sanctions already in the Senate already, there are more than 80 co-sponsors for a bill that he's been holding up. I think the most likely scenario is probably the third scenario, which is it's a good meeting, everyone walks away from it pretty positively. But they set up another meeting. They're talking about a second meeting with Zelensky in the room as well. Trump reassured European leaders that he's not going to make decisions over the head of the Ukrainians on their land. He said he's going to work more toward a ceasefire than the land swap they talked about before. So it's an incredibly important meeting because you just never really know exactly what Trump is going to do in a single meeting. On the other hand, I think at this point, we're more likely not to have the horror scenario, not have the best case scenario, but have some sort of messy middle and continue the talks afterward.
Yeah, and Trump himself said yesterday he does not speak for Ukraine, but he's clearly trying to accomplish something. What do you think he's going to try to convince Vladimir Putin of?
Well, he's called it a feel-out meeting, but with the European leaders, he said that there will be consequences for Putin to pay if he doesn't stop his war. I've been talking to Trump insiders, people in the administration, and they confirmed that Trump really hates the bloodshed. He hates it wherever he sees it, but he particularly hates seeing it in Ukraine after Putin has talked to him. So Putin gives him nice words on a call, and then the next day he's hitting a kindergarten or he's hitting a hospital in Ukraine, and he hates that. What he could do, people point to the situation of Iran, where he gave the Iranian leaders 60 days to negotiate with him. At the end of those 60 days, after the Israelis had already kicked the Iranians in the defense missile teeth, he then sent B-2s and he struck 3 nuclear facilities. Now, he's not going to do that on Russia. He's not going to bomb Russia with B-2s. But what's the moral equivalent? I think the moral equivalent is getting tough on sanctions. The moral equivalent is making clear that Ukraine will have security guarantees, mostly from the Europeans, but some backup from the United States.
Yeah.
And then the weaponry will continue to flow because Putin is not going to be ready to make a good deal for Ukraine and its future at the current situation where he actually thinks the momentum is on his side.
There are already many economic sanctions on Russia. They are effectively cut off from the banking and insurance systems for the Western world. Still doing a lot of business with India and China. We get that. The sanctions, though, you would have to admit, Fred, have not necessarily been enforced to the level at which one might want them to because, as I've sure you have too, talked to people in the former administration, you also don't want to send oil prices to $140 a barrel because then gasoline goes to $6 and it's a political non-starter. Are there sanctions, new sanctions, or the enforcement of existing sanctions that we could do that would really hurt Putin?
So I have talked to Trump administration officials, and they seem to feel that there's just much more latitude to get tough on the oil sanctions. The Senate sanctions would be secondary sanctions on countries like India and China who are buying oil. And don't forget, Trump has now threatened to put a 50% tariff on India because of, in no small part, because of the oil it's buying from Russia. And that was really a message to Russia that he's willing to get tougher on that. So he could get tougher. They feel that they could get tougher on that, particularly as oil prices are relatively low right now, and they don't feel that they would jump in the same way that they might have earlier. But you are right, the Biden administration never wanted to get too tough on the sanctions that were in place on oil. partly because of the inflationary impact it can have, and even the impact it might have had on the last presidential election. So it's always sensitive, but I'm hearing that they're more in a mood to do it now. The interesting thing is Trump doesn't like being humiliated. He doesn't like being played along. He usually responds quickly on that. He has been very, very slow to respond to Putin's incalcitrance. The real question is, will he be really willing to do it now? And I think nobody knows that except for President Trump himself. And as I've argued, the most important square foot of geopolitical space right now is between his ears.